You could be holding them at gunpoint, be like, okay, you're going to allow trans kids to exist. And they'll be like, I just can't do it. So, as some people know, a couple days ago, I was once again at the Ohio Board of Education meeting. I actually popped off quite a bit as far as fame the last time I was at the meeting, and the time before that, really, when I didn't even speak at all. The last time I was there, I spoke. My speech got seen by Vosh and many others. And this time I spoke, and, you know, my speech didn't get seen by as many people, but, you know, it's not really about me getting seen, right? At the end of the day, I like the attention, but, you know, at the end of the day, it is about making a difference. And I did my best, along with many others. I will say, at the meeting, there were way more people against the Title IX resolution, and I will explain what that means in a minute, but basically, being against it, good. Being for it, bad. All on the same page? Being against the resolution is good. Being for the resolution is bad. All right, we've got our very basic side set up now. So, people who are against it, including me, do not want trans kids to be persecuted, right? And so I went to the meeting, and I gave a little speech, and I'm going to play the full unfiltered speech here for you right now. And I know that I've played it on stream before, but this is the first time it's going up on YouTube, so I just wanted to recap, make sure we're all on the same page. And I do think some people have said that this speech is better than my last one. I have mixed opinions on that. I think this one is a little bit more direct as far as my feelings on parents' rights and the way that term is being weaponized and not actually respected. So we'll take a look real quick at my speech, and then we'll see what the opposing side has to say about it. Just like one teensy tiny little example, right? Okay, let's get going. Hello, my name is Alec Leindecker. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a registered nurse working toward my psychiatric nurse practitioner license. I'm here today speaking on behalf of my partner, a non-binary teacher, as well as some individuals who could not be here today due to stalking and harassment they've received since their last appearance here. This is my third board meeting regarding the Title IX resolution, and through my time here, I've heard numerous statements made in favor of the resolution, from vague religious gestures to debunked lies about litter boxes in schools. But the dominant theme seems to be parents' rights, so I wanted to speak a bit about my views on that topic specifically, because I'm a passionate advocate for parents' rights. I believe in parents' rights to affordable prenatal care and childbirth procedures, as well as the equipment required to care for their infants, to maternity and paternity leave from work so they may spend time with their children in their most formative years, to affordable groceries and school supplies for their children, to ensure their children receive accurate education regarding the history of our nation from teachers who do not live paycheck to paycheck, the meals for their children, both at school and at home, and for their children to not go hungry or accumulate lunch debt, to be able to follow appropriate and medically supported procedures for their children, including gender affirmation, to safe sidewalks, bike lanes, and other infrastructure for their children, to have their children protected from bullying regardless of their identity. I believe in parents' rights to be gay and trans, to marry whomever they choose, to adopt children, to have their children taught that gay and trans people exist, to not have their children subjected to genital inspections, a practice supported in Ohio House Bill 151, which has been passed by the Ohio House of Representatives, to bring their children to child-friendly events of all kinds without having their lives threatened, a right which the terrorists in Columbus 2 Saturdays ago apparently did not believe in. And finally, I believe in parents' rights to have their children delivered back to them in the safety of a school bus, not riddled with bullet wounds and lifeless in a coffin. To my knowledge, the resolution Brennan Shea has proposed does not positively address any of the aforementioned rights, but instead ignores most of them, exacerbates some of them, and exposes queer children to ostracization and abuse. It appears to not be a parents' rights bill, but a queer restriction bill. Brennan's resolution poses a legitimate threat to the safety of our children. Its name is a lie and a mockery to the real issues facing the board's constituents, and it demonstrates a lack of foresight and care. As an Ohio citizen, I'm embarrassed that we are even having a conversation about whether a vulnerable group of children deserve the same rights as their peers, and dressing it up as though it's a conversation about parents' rights. To all the board members, I would like to insist that you vote no on this ridiculous resolution and go back to the issues that matter. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And there you go. Yeah, I think that absolutely crushed it. Thank you. I was a little bit less nervous that time. I was a little bit jumpy, though. Still a little nervous. You know, it's a lot different when you get up there and you realize you're on camera locally, you know, and in front of like representatives who now know who you are and your name and everything. But anyway, I think that summed up my feelings pretty well, honestly. You want to fucking talk to me about parents' rights? Okay, we can talk about it. Sure, let's talk about parents' rights, all right? So let's take a look at somebody else who was there. This is Samuel McGuire, who is in fact on Twitter right here. And he's the host of a local conservative radio broadcast. Let's see what he had to say. Because, we got to look at both sides, right? We got to be fair and look at both sides here.
Good afternoon. Welcome. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, President McGuire and the Ohio State Board of Education for allowing me the opportunity to testify. My name is Samuel McGuire, and I'm a resident of Defiance, Ohio. Frederick Douglass was a slave who learned to read, got his freedom, and went to be a writer, a reformer, statesman, a newspaper publisher, the first black U.S. Marshal, held governmental positions appointed by Presidents Hayes, Garfield, Harrison. President Lincoln conferred with him 3 times. I bring him up today because he is quoted as saying, "Reading is the path to freedom." His story is a life of struggles with a society that deemed him to be less than. Through determination and the ability to read, he became an overcomer and a role model for all races.
See, I know where he's going with this. He's saying that just like that guy was looked at differently by his peers and disenfranchised as a result of it, that, trans people are similar in that regard, and we should respect them and, their needs and their desires as well and their goals, right? I think that's where he's going with this. Let's keep going.
Now let's look at the product of education in the U.S. today. The New York Times in October of 2022 reported that Ohio's 8th grade students are 33% proficient in reading. These are failing statistics. Children are being run through an education system that is focused on CRT, SEL, or comprehensive sex education rather than reading, writing, and math.
There it is. All right. Now we've gotten to the meat of it. Perfect. So this is called virtue signaling. This is a very common tactic used by conservatives. They don't actually give a shit about test scores. They don't give a shit about like the learning that children do or how smart they are, how productive they are. They only care about making sure that there's no CRT in my schools and no transgenderism in my schools. You had to get set up and throw it away, yeah. So the moment that you say there's CRT in grade schools, you lost the plot. Because that's like saying if you were for some reason to be against math, the teaching of math, that's like saying that like first graders are learning calculus. I'm sorry. No, no. CRT is a little bit more complicated than that. What they mean is kids are learning about racism, and they don't like that. They don't like that kids are learning that the U.S. has a history of racism. They also don't like that kids are learning that trans and gay people exist, which is cringe, and I disagree with that. Anyway.
When they are taught what to think and not how to think, they are not only being robbed of an education, but they are being bullied and manipulated by a system that is supposed to be educating them.
Okay, so teachers can tell you what to think sometimes because there are facts and there are not facts, right? There are real things and there are fake things. And a real thing that is happening is gay and trans people existing, as well as racism being in our illustrious history, right?
This Title IX edict is a shiny object that distracts from the real challenge. Children are being groomed. What is promoted increases. By the SEL and comprehensive sexual education starting in kindergarten, they're only being challenged to make gender choices and pressured to use grooming pronouns when it is not
grooming pronouns. I missed this the first time. Grooming pronouns. Yes. It's grooming to say that like a trans child goes by she, her, or they, them. Yeah, totally, dude. Oh my gosh. I've never thought of that. Never thought of it that way. Keep going, my man. You're doing good.
Appropriate. But they haven't even developed discernment yet before they can get a job or even vote, drive. They're supposed to be enjoying the innocence of being a child.
Yes, and you're impeding on that by saying that trans children cannot exist or like play in the sports that they want to play in or go to the bathrooms that they want to use. You're sexualizing everything. You are the one sexualizing everything. You're saying that like it's sexual. Like if you think of trans kids and you think sexual, that's a you problem, man. Seek therapy.
They're being pressured to make decisions about their gender. Title IX also emphasizes a strategy of giving schools the go-ahead to deny parents the knowledge that such an age-inappropriate decision is being made. And who pays when the child grows up and realizes that it was a decision before its time? Is the school there to work with the child through the regrets?
You have no statistics to show that this is happening on a broad scale. And they never do, by the way. They'll pull up like loosely related studies about testosterone and about like surgery complications or whatever, and like single case studies, or that's if you're being generous. More often, it's just a buddy of mine, right? Buddy of mine said they regret transitioning, but that's my data, and that means that the millions of trans people that are transitioning and are happy with it are actually not happy with it, and it's bad to be trans, etc.
To take the responsibility for depression or suicide.
You look like I'd say, well, golly, in a Hallmark movie. That's great.
Testimony. A slave who learned to read and went to become a statesman. In your decision making regarding Ohio's education, are you looking to make modern day slaves of the government out of children who can't read and can't get ahead of themselves? Or are you looking to make productive citizens who can determine their own destiny and adjust to personal decisions that their life chooses to require to them?
This man would have absolutely supported slavery back in the day, by the way. If he had grown up in Jim Crow South, he would have been one of the ones who said, we need slavery back. Whatever happened to the plantations? All these kids are learning about how, all my white kids are learning about how black people are somehow equal. They don't need to be learning about that. They need to be learning about math, which I was never taught, and reading, which I was never taught, and hygiene, which I was never taught. And they need to be learning that black people need to know their place and go back to the plantations. That's what I'm saying.
It requires them to make, I encourage you to vote yes on this amendment. Thank you so much for your time.
Boo, boo, hiss. Oh, yeah. That was Samuel McGuire, famed radio host, famed local radio host. Everyone knows him. Everyone loves him. And I just want to point out, by the way, if you go to his profile page, you can see redfutureradio.com right here. And if we scroll, let's see, listen to our programs. What's this? The Conservative Crusader. He looks rather young. The Conservative Crusader is a 16-year-old GOP Josh's political program. Josh's show consists of his unfiltered, uncensored, and unapologetic view of the government and politics from a Generation Z perspective daily. So there you have it. We're the ones doing the grooming, guys. The liberals are the ones doing the grooming. And yet, here is a 16-year-old shilling their awful fascist ideas live on a local radio broadcast. I love that. I love that, dude. Love that so much for him. Love that for all of them. Okay? It's very normal. It is a very normal thing to be happening. I remember when I was 16 years old, I was definitely a very normal individual. You know what? Honestly, it would not shock me if he was like far smarter than any of his conservative adult peers. You know, as far as that can be called peers. Because again, he is underage. So, you know, little sussy there. Little sussy. Of course, he's a right-wing radio demon. Yeah. Hey, why not? Why not, man? So, yeah, that's Samuel McGuire. Very normal person. And let's get back to the actual substance of why we're even talking about this. We spent a long time on the hearings for the resolution. And I want to remind you that dozens of people spoke at it. I think like 5 people, if that, maybe like slightly more than that. I want to say like 4 to 8 people spoke in favor of this resolution, which means that they would be wanting to cancel trans kids. Spoke in favor of it. And the rest of these dozens of people spoke against it, okay? I was surprised, actually, at the outpouring of support for the trans community during that. It was very good. Unfortunately, 5 of the conservative people, the conservative school board members, who were pushing the hardest for this thing to pass, did not show up to listen to our testimonies. Angry but not surprised to hear the 5 Ohio State Board of Ed reps who were pushing the hardest for the anti-trans resolution did not come back after lunch to listen to constituent testimony. The cowards, Brendan Shea, Mike Toll, John Hagan, Diana Fessler, and Kirsten Hill. Do your job, says Aaron. Yeah, they did their jobs as conservatives, I can tell you that. They completely ignored the will of the people. Most Ohioans do not want this, and yet they decided, we're not going to listen to them. In fact, we're not even going to literally listen to them. We're just going to eat our lunch, eat our little lunches, and go home and just ignore them. Well, they didn't actually go home. I don't know where they went, but they showed up later to vote on it for sure. Because, as you can see from this article, Ohio State Board of Education passes toned down resolution opposing Biden's proposed LGBTQ protections in Title IX. Beautiful stuff. Very good stuff. Yeah, they passed it 10-7. There was one person who sat the vote out. The rest of them voted 10 in favor, 7 opposed. And we'll get to the individuals in question. The beautiful, beautiful people who decided that they just really hate trans kids. Anyway, let's go. The Ohio State Board of Education voted Tuesday to send Ohio school districts a letter saying they opposed President Joe Biden's proposed LGBTQ protections, although the form of the resolution that passed is less controversial than when it was first introduced. This is the silver lining right here. And we'll get to the watered down version of the bill. It's still a harmful bill, make no mistake. It still sucks. It's still anti-trans at its core, but it did remove at least the most harmful things. But I do want to, real quick, just point out that conservatives have a habit of doing this. It's called the door in the face method. And if you've never heard of this, what that means is, imagine somebody slamming a door in your face and they go, ow, right? You didn't want them to open the door at all, right? But then they slam it in your face and you're like, ow, what was that for? And then you're like, oh, sorry, I'll open it more gently next time. But you didn't want them to open it at all. But you know, as long as they're opening it gently, I guess it's fine, right? I mean, that's a good compromise, right? So the door in the face mentality is something that they love, or the method is something they love to use. They'll put ridiculous, outlandish demands in the bill, and then when they have a watered down version of what they wanted, they'll pass it through. And then this is how they make incremental progress, which is cringe. The resolution that passed supports a lawsuit that Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost and 21 other state attorneys general have filed against the U.S. Department of Education over the protections proposed for Title IX. It calls upon the General Assembly to, quote, resist federal executive branch attempts to undermine the original intent of Title IX. I was going to skip this, but let's go over it. Title IX, which refers to the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, originally protected girls from discrimination based on sex and academics and sports, as well as from harassment and violence in K through 12 schools and colleges. Under the administration of former President Barack Obama, transgender students were included under Title IX. Under former President Donald Trump, they were removed. Biden is proposing to bring them back. They don't want that. They really don't want to go, in their words, and their terms, backwards. In our terms, forward, which is the objective direction we're headed if we reinstate it. Anyway, removed from earlier versions of the Ohio State Board of Education resolution, so these are the things that were originally in there and have been taken out. Let's look at just how ghoulish and awful these people are. What they originally wanted. A provision that urged the state's roughly 610 school districts to defy the proposed U.S. Department of Education guidance, which could jeopardize their federal funding for special education and free and reduced lunch. Roughly 8% of Ohio public school district money comes from the federal government. So they are giving up 8% of their federal funding, or at least they wanted to make sure that trans kids are being abused. Just make sure that they're, not happy. And also I want to point out, this is not the only way in which they're trying to waste money. They're going to be wasting money as well on lawsuits against the federal government on Title IX protections for trans people, for trans children. Great stuff. Because if there's one thing we need to be spending money on right now, it's making sure that trans people are not affirmed, right? Making sure that they're miserable. Good stuff. Anyway, mentions that transgender students would be using bathrooms and locker rooms of the gender they identify with. So this was removed. Support for Ohio General Assembly legislation that would require school officials to out students who speak to them about possibly being LGBTQ or wanting to use a different name or pronouns. It's very good that this one was removed. Okay, this is the one that we were most scared of, really, because this would basically entail that teachers and school officials would be mandated to subject their students to abuse. So it's very good that this one was taken out. I think this was possibly the most dangerous part. Still sucks that it passed, but let's keep going. And then the last one that was removed. On Tuesday, shortly before a majority of the school board voted to pass the resolution, the preamble of the resolution was removed. It said, quote, biological sex, male and female, is one such objective scientific fact. Sex is not arbitrarily assigned at birth, but rather identifies observable, quantifiable differences between males and females. Denying the reality of biological sex destroys foundational truths upon which education rests. Opponents of the resolution said it contains unscientific and inaccurate information. So this is baby brain, okay? They think they're so smart when they say stuff like this. They use big words, big boy words like arbitrarily, right? Very big boy words, but it's baby brain. This is somebody who is like a third grade prodigy could have written this, okay? And really when I say prodigy, I just mean in their vocabulary. They always say like basic biology, right? Not even really that. I was gonna say like kind of, but not even really that. Like you learn in biology the two basic sexes, which is male and female, right? And then it's like more complicated later on. But biology never teaches you that like gender and sex are the same thing. Right? Unless you're like in a conservative area, I guess. They teach you about the sexes and the sex parts, the sex organs, the sex cells, how sex works, how reproduction works. And that's all great and good, right? Fine and good. But it doesn't talk about gender expression. It doesn't talk about gender categories. It only talks about that. And it does actually teach you that there are in-between areas, especially in the animal kingdom and, hermaphroditic creatures and all that, really during elementary school. That's part of basic biology, and they just ignore that, right? Like, there are things between male and female. So this is just wrong. This is just wrong on a fundamental level. But they think they're so smart. Good stuff. I was going to highlight more, and then I forgot. Brennan Shea was actually the one that introduced the 2 resolutions that took much of the controversial language out, but still kept the premise of opposing transgender part of Title IX. Toll on Tuesday insisted that the letters continue to go out to schools districts because he wanted the school districts to understand that the Biden administration's proposal isn't law. There are some school boards that currently have put policies in place, but based on advice that this is law, he said. I mean, the law part of it is that you're going to have your federal funding pulled. So it's really not a matter of whether or not you're required, mandated by law to do it, or else you'll be jailed. That's not the point. The point is your federal funding is pulled. And then you can't, like, feed your fucking kids. Like, this is just stupid. This is asinine. You're basically spiting yourself. You're opposing trans rights in spite of yourself, which is stupid. Honesty for Ohio Education estimates the state board has spent 16 hours debating the resolution and listening to testimony. Meantime, Ohio students are academically behind thanks to the pandemic. Good stuff. If there's one thing we should be focusing on, it's making sure that trans kids are outed to their parents and not happy, and definitely not on the objective education measures. I mean, you heard this guy say it, Samuel Maguire, right? You heard him say it. Like, yeah, our kids are not doing very good in school. I think that's pretty true. I've never looked at the statistics, but I'm willing to believe that. But like I said, focusing on this stupid, silly issue instead of just letting trans kids exist and teaching them, hey, by the way, trans people are this and that. Like, it only takes a minute, right? And really, it doesn't even come up that often. It's just like, yeah, trans people exist. Like, that's all it has to be. And they're like, oh, they're getting so caught up in it and confusing our kids. Like, you tell a kid that, oh, Uncle Billy used to be Uncle Billy, but now she's Aunt Tina. Okay? Kid's gonna be like, okay. I mean, they might have some questions, but who cares? Of course kids have questions. They're kids. Anyway, you may remember Cynthia Peoples if you were on stream. If this gets uploaded before the Cynthia Peoples talk, I apologize. You will see it soon. But Cynthia Peoples came on stream to talk to me about this resolution and the cut your nose to spite your face. That's what it was. Thank you. To talk about the resolution and the danger it poses. So this is her statement. There's a whole big statement from Honesty for Ohio Education, and I highly recommend you all read it because it's very powerful and I think it's very good. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to read Cynthia Peoples' part. She says, today, we mourn the loss of Ohio children and families to safely express who they are and bring their joyful, authentic selves into their classrooms. We mourn the loss of schools and educators as trusted, safe spaces for children to turn when grappling with complicated issues of identity and family dynamics. We mourn for the loss of the humanity from those State Board of Education members who chose partisan politics over their duty to protect the rights and safety of all Ohio children. 1000% agreed. I mean, that's all this is at the end of the day. They're a fucking cult. They're so caught up in their puritanical ideas that they cannot just objectively do their fucking jobs as our elected politicians and protect children, regardless of their identity. They can't do it. They can't do it. They are soulless demons. They just can't, okay? You could be holding them at gunpoint and being like, which don't do that, but you could, right? You could be holding them at gunpoint and be like, okay, you're going to allow trans kids to exist. And they'll be like, I just can't do it. It's impossible for them, okay? Because they're the scum of the fucking earth. They don't know any better, all right? You know what? That's even giving them too much credit. Of course they know better. They know better, but they don't fucking care. If they didn't know any better, I could actually forgive them. Anyway, finally, I wanted to just, give you all a little list of the people who voted no, right? Now, there was one person who abstained from voting, and I considered putting them on this list, but there's already 10 other people to focus on, and they can be, they'll be absolved from this reading, right? I want to focus on the people who objectively said, I will not protect the rights of trans kids, right? Names, photos, and available info for all of Ohio School Board representatives who voted in favor of Title IX restrictions to exclude queer children. This is all public information. This is all on the ohio.gov website. You can find all of this, okay? Obviously, don't go harassing or stalking anybody. That's bad, etc., etc. But for all intents and purposes, here is their lovely faces and their lovely names. We'll go through real quick. We got Walt Davis. Everyone give a hand to Walt Davis. Doug Dimmadome over here. We got Diana Fessler. Now, I want to dig into her a little bit. I know I said be quick, but real quick. Let's just take a look at some interesting things that have been going on with Diana Fessler. State Board of Education member Diana Fessler defended white supremacy today. What? I would have never. Oh, no. From a conservative politician? No. This is wrong. Let's see what's going on here.
As I was reading Resolution 20, that's the critical race resolution adopted before the board before I came on the board this time. It has one sentence in it, and it is this: the State Board of Education condemns, in the highest terms possible, white supremacy culture. Now, I don't know how on earth that could have got past our legal department, because to me, it seems patently non-compliant with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Can you, in your wildest dreams, imagine that we had adopted a resolution that said the state, in the highest terms possible, white supremacy culture?
But like, I don't understand. Like, white supremacy culture is still bad. Like, that's fine. And she seems upset about that.
Now, I don't know how on earth that could have got past our legal department, because to me, it seems patently non-compliant with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Can you, in your wildest dreams, imagine that we had adopted a resolution that said the State Board of Education condemns, in the highest terms possible, black culture?
Okay, so there's a distinct difference between white supremacy culture and black culture. There's a little bit of a difference there. She couldn't even be bothered to say black supremacy culture, by the way, which I also agree on a certain level, but also, like, black supremacy culture is not a dominant force in this country, nor will it probably ever be, okay? I don't like black supremacy culture either, and it does exist, but it's not a driving fundamental force that, you know, disenfranchises white people. It's just like the way white supremacy disenfranchises black people. It just does not do that. It doesn't do that.
Oh, we'd have a war going on now, wouldn't we? Because I was reading Resolution 20. That's the critical race.
Oh, okay. That was Diana Fessler, everybody. Interesting stuff. I think there's another clip from her. Oh, yeah. No, this is great. She's also an anti-vaxxer. Very cool. Very cool. Very pog.
Because it's on vaccines. So, yes, it is. That's why I'm bringing...
It's even more quiet than the last one. Jesus.
All right. Please proceed. Me get back on track. So I did a little research and found Education First Consulting. It appeared on my first search to go right back to Bill Gates, who has financial gain in vaccines. And he also has financial gain in having a laptop in every kid's lap. But I kind of let that go by. But then after I looked at the paperwork that you sent me last week, there was an individual who was your reference on your application to become state superintendent, just put in her name only, and it went right back to Bill Gates. Now, I'm just wondering what kind of influence Bill Gates does have on you, because Education First Consulting, there seems to be one person in every single state, and you seem to be our guy. How are you paid by Bill Gates?
Excuse me.
Because of the vaccine. It's important.
But it's a very loose connection at this point,
well,
Mrs.
let him tell me
Fessler.
about his loose connection. I'm willing to hear that, please.
Loose connection is putting that lightly. That's just Q posting. Like, it's basically just Q posting, right? Like, that's some QAnon bullshit. Like, you know, yeah, state superintendent's paid by Bill Gates. Yeah, fantastic stuff. Because, like, there's this whole thing. Before it was George Soros, it was Bill Gates, right? They were all about, like, Bill Gates. How much is Bill Gates paying you? I can't disclose that. Anyway, yeah, so she seems convinced that, like, people who oppose her are getting paid by Bill Gates. Very normal and well-adjusted individual. Glad that she ran unopposed in her 2020 election. Great stuff. Love that. This is why it's so important to vote and to organize and make sure that you have good people running in your state. Otherwise, you get fuckwits like this running unopposed. Jesus Christ. Lord help us. My God. This lady shouldn't be allowed to drive, let alone have a voice on the school board. Yeah, well, that's what you get. Sue Hackett. Now, she's a former nurse. I know that I keep doing this. I think she's the last one that I got dirt on. Former RN. Fuck you. Okay. You're against objectively correct medical procedures for children. Sincerely, fuck you. You're a disgrace to the nursing field. Sue Hackett. John Hagan. Kirsten Hill. Thank you so much. Jenny Kilgore. Paul LaRue. We got Charlotte McGuire. Now, a lot of people were mad at Charlotte McGuire last time I spoke because she cut me off, and that was her job to cut me off. I'm not mad at her for that. I am, in fact, though, mad at her this time around for deciding that trans kids don't deserve rights, so that's pretty cringe. Brendan Shea, he was the original proponent of the bill, so thank him for that. Fuck you, Brendan Shea. And Mike Toll, finally Mike Toll, the person pretty much leading the charge when it comes to federally suing for the right to discriminate against trans children. So that's cool. Thank you, Mike Toll. Thank you, Mike Toll. One more thing about Mike Toll. Very modest living conditions here. Very modest living conditions here. Good stuff there. You can tell that, you know, he's a man of the people. Beautiful stuff. Just saying. Moving on. So, even though much of the worst parts of Title IX or the Title IX resolution got removed, it still blatantly and openly discriminates against trans children. It says that they're not protected by Title IX protections, which means that we are discriminating against them and their persons. Trans children did not choose to be trans. They were just kind of they developed that way. It's subconscious. And yet we're telling them that their existence is abnormal or an abomination or, they don't deserve the same rights as everybody else. They're being forced into social norms that they do not want. And I don't like that. The Ohio School Board is going against every single scientific and medical institution and their suggestions for how best to treat trans children. And they're doing it at the cost of the taxpayer. I want to reiterate this. This is very important. They are doing this at the cost of the taxpayer. Conservatives, the party which is supposedly best known for wanting to lower taxes, they're using our taxpayer money to pay to discriminate against trans kids. They're literally pulling money out of the pockets of us, of their constituents to do this. I'm inadvertently funding it, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So as far as where we go from here, basically, like I said, the worst parts were removed, so it's not quite as urgent, I guess, but it still sucks. They still have a long way to go as far as suing federally for their rights to deny children their Title IX rights, and I don't know how far they're going to get with that. And I am in contact with Equality Ohio and all them to figure out what else I can do to help. But, this was an L for us, unfortunately, and we're going to see L's like this. But like I always say at the end of my videos with bad news like this, it is important to not get doomer about it, right? Because in the grand scheme, this was a small L for us, okay? Still sucks. It's still dog shit, but it was a small L, okay? Partial W, I don't think this was a partial W. It was an L, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep fighting. Thankfully, a lot of those people were voted out of the school board, and I think that this will help to organize people for the future so that when the 2024 election happens and like people like Brendan Shea, their term limits are up and they're up for re-election, they'll get booted out, okay? I know sometimes these elections with the school board, like these smaller boys, these smaller girls and such, don't seem quite as important, but they are. And this is why. As I said, a crazy Q fucking poster ran unopposed. Okay? She's insane. She thinks that school board members who oppose her are being paid by Bill Gates. She thinks that. They run unopposed. And this is why it's so important. If you are a person who has been thinking about running for office, do it. Okay? Literally just go do it. If you have like the means and the knowledge to do so. And even if you don't have the knowledge and you have the means, just go do it. It's infinitely better than whatever this shit was. Okay? And if you don't have the means to do that, support people who do. Find out who's running locally, who is the most left-leaning, who is the most socially progressive. Get them in and keep the conservatives out, because I can tell you that your Democratic politicians ain't gonna do it for you. All right, get organized and go from there. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want to be notified when I upload. Leave a comment with your thoughts. And like I said, I know this was a downer, but it is important to cover this stuff and make sure that we're up to date on it. Hopefully the next video that I make on a topic like this will be a more positive one, because we have been getting wins. The trans community and the queer community at large have been getting major wins. Don't forget, we've recently, on a federal level, legalized gay marriage. States have to recognize your gay marriage if you get gay married, which is cool. Which is awesome. So don't forget that. We are winning, and they're being backed into a corner, which is why they are subverting democracy and the will of the people, because they have to at this point. They don't have any other choice. They're squeezing these things through despite us. So we lost this battle, but we will win the war. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.